I stared at the bank statement on my phone screen, reading the numbers for the fourth time. The words hadn't changed, but somehow I kept hoping they would rearrange themselves into something less devastating. Account balance: $247.18. 3 months ago, there had been $43,000 in that account. My inheritance from my grandmother. Money I'd saved for the bakery I'd dreamed about since culinary school. My name is Patricia Winters, and I'm 36 years old. The coffee shop where I sat suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. Outside the window, palm trees swayed in the Miami heat, oblivious to the fact that my entire future had been stolen. My husband Derek had access to that account. We'd added him 2 years ago when I had surgery and needed someone to handle bills. I trusted him completely. That morning I'd logged in to transfer funds for commercial kitchen equipment. Instead I found almost nothing. Just that pathetic $247.18, like someone had scraped the bottom of a jar and left the crumbs. My hands shook as I scrolled through the transaction history. Withdrawals. Dozens of them over the past 3 months. $5,000 here. $1,000 there. Never enough to trigger alerts I'd set up. Always just under the threshold. Clever. Methodical. Deliberate. Each withdrawal was marked business expenses in the memo line. What business? Derek worked in sales for a pharmaceutical company. He had a steady salary and a company card for legitimate expenses. Called him immediately. The phone rang 4 times before he answered. His voice casual and warm. "Hey babe, what's up?" he said. I could hear traffic in the background. I kept my voice steady, not wanting to accuse him without hearing his explanation first. Maybe there was a reasonable answer. Maybe I was missing something obvious. "Derek, I'm looking at our savings account. There's barely anything left. Do you know what happened?" The silence that followed lasted 3 seconds too long. "Oh, that," Derek said finally, his tone shifting to something rehearsed. "I've been meaning to talk to you about it. I had some investment opportunities come up. Really solid stuff, Trish. I didn't want to bother you with the details because you've been so stressed about the bakery plans. Investment opportunities. My grandmother's inheritance, the money she'd saved her entire life working as a seamstress, had become his investment opportunities without a single conversation. You took $43,000 without asking me?" I said quietly. A woman at the next table glanced over. I lowered my voice. "That money was for my bakery, Derek. We talked about this. You knew what it meant to me." He sighed like I was being unreasonable. "It's not gone, Patricia. It's invested. It's going to grow. In 6 months we'll have double that amount. I'm trying to help us build a better future." He kept saying us, but he'd made these decisions alone. We met at home that evening. Our apartment in Coral Gables felt different somehow, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The leather couch Derek had insisted on buying last year. The expensive sound system. The designer coffee maker. All purchased during the same 3 months my inheritance disappeared. "Show me the investments," I said before he could even set down his briefcase. "Show me where the money went." Derek loosened his tie and poured himself a drink. "Trish, you don't understand these things. It's complicated financial stuff. Trust me, I've got it handled." Trust him. The man who'd drained my account without permission now wanted trust. "Show me anyway," I insisted. "If it's legitimate, you'll have paperwork. Contracts. Something official." He pulled out his phone, scrolled for a moment, then showed me a screenshot of what looked like an investment portfolio. Numbers and percentages filled the screen, but no company names, no official documentation, nothing I could verify. 5. "This could be anything," I said, studying the screenshot. "I need real proof, Derek. Bank transfers showing where the money went. Investment contracts. Something concrete." His jaw tightened. "You're calling me a liar. After 8 years of marriage, you think I'd steal from you?" The word hung between us. I hadn't used it, but he had. "I think you took money without asking and now you're being defensive instead of transparent," I replied. If everything is legitimate, proving it should be easy. Derek set down his glass hard enough that liquid sloshed over the rim. Fine. You want proof. I'll get you proof. But I'm disappointed, Patricia. I'm trying to build something for us, and you're treating me like a criminal. He left for the gym, slamming the door behind him. I sat alone in our apartment, surrounded by his expensive purchases, and finally let myself consider the possibility I'd been avoiding. My husband had stolen from me. The proof never came. 3 days passed with Derek making excuses. The documents were at his office. His business partner had the files. The investment platform was down for maintenance. Each excuse felt thinner than the last. I started doing my own investigating. I checked our credit cards and found charges I didn't recognize. Payments to a business called South Shore Properties LLC. Monthly transfers of $3,200 for the past 4 months. I'd never heard of it. When I searched online, I found a basic website for a property management company with a Miami address and a generic contact form. No phone number. No staff directory. Nothing substantial. I drove to the address listed on their website. It was a strip mall in Kendall with a nail salon, a tax preparation service, and an empty storefront with paper covering the windows. No property management office. No South Shore Properties LLC. Just an address that didn't match reality. 7. I took photos of the empty storefront and went home to confront Derek again. He was in the living room watching a basketball game, drinking beer like everything was normal. Explain this, I said, showing him the photos. Explain why you've been sending thousands of dollars to a company that doesn't exist. Derek glanced at the screen, then back at the television. The office is temporary. They're between locations right now. Between locations for 4 months. He muted the game finally and looked at me with something close to pity. Patricia, you're spiraling. This paranoia isn't healthy. Maybe you should talk to someone, a therapist or something. All this stress about the bakery is making you see problems that aren't there. Gaslighting. That's what my sister would call it. Making me doubt my own perception of reality. But I had screenshots, had photos. I had an empty bank account and no reasonable explanation. I opened a new bank account the next morning. One Derek didn't know about. I deposited the remaining $247.18 and changed my direct deposit for my job at the catering company. It wasn't much, but it was mine and protected. Then I called a divorce attorney. Not because I'd decided to leave, but because I needed to understand my options. The consultation was free, and the attorney, Mrs. Valeria Torres, listened to my story without judgment. You need documentation, she said after I'd finished. Bank statements, credit card records, anything showing the money trail. Florida is an equitable distribution state, but proving he took marital assets without consent will matter in proceedings. Marital assets. My grandmother's inheritance had become marital property the moment it entered our joint account. What about criminal charges? Yes. If he stole from me, can't I report it? Mrs. Torres hesitated. Technically, yes. But proving theft between spouses is complicated. Police often view it as a civil matter. 9. I spent the next week gathering evidence. I printed bank statements going back 6 months. I documented every suspicious charge. I created a spreadsheet tracking where our money had gone versus where Derek claimed it went. The picture that emerged was damning. Beyond the South Shore Properties payments, there were charges at high-end restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel rooms in Fort Lauderdale when Derek claimed to be traveling for work. Payments to a luxury car rental service. My husband wasn't just stealing from me. He was living a parallel life I knew nothing about. I hired a private investigator. His name was Oscar Fuentes, and he'd been recommended by Mrs. Torres. He was expensive, but I paid with money from my new secret account, adding hours at the catering company to cover costs. Oscar worked fast. Within a week he had photos. Derek, leaving a waterfront condo in Fort Lauderdale with a woman I'd never seen before. The woman was young, maybe late 20s, with dark hair and expensive clothes. In the photos, Derek had his arm around her waist. They were laughing. In one image, they were kissing beside a silver Mercedes with dealer plates. Oscar's report included more details. The woman's name was Vanessa Klein. She worked as a real estate agent. The condo they'd been leaving was listed under South Shore Properties LLC, a property management company that apparently managed exactly one property. The property where my husband kept his mistress. My inheritance hadn't gone to investments. It had gone to funding Derek's affair. The expensive dinners, the hotel rooms, condo, car. All of it purchased with money my grandmother had saved her entire life. Money meant to help me build something meaningful. I sat in my car outside the catering company, staring at the photos, feeling something harden inside my chest. Not heartbreak. Not anymore. Clarity. Levin. I didn't confront Derek immediately. Instead, I planned. I printed copies of everything. The bank statements, photos, Oscar's full report. I stored one set in a safety deposit box at my new bank. I gave another set to Mrs. Torres. I kept a third set at my sister's house. Then I waited. Hurricane season had started, and forecasters were tracking a system in the Atlantic. Tropical storm Melissa was strengthening, heading northwest toward Florida. Everyone was watching, preparing, and buying supplies. By midweek, Melissa had become a Category 2 hurricane with Miami in its projected path. Derek started talking about evacuation. "We should go to your sister's place in Orlando," he suggested. "Get out of the potential strike zone." I agreed outwardly, but privately I made different plans. Because Oscar had discovered something else. Something interesting. The condo where Derek kept Vanessa, the property owned by his fake company, was in a mandatory evacuation zone right on the Fort Lauderdale waterfront. 12. Hurricane Melissa strengthened to Category 3. The governor declared a state of emergency. Evacuation orders went out for coastal areas, including Fort Lauderdale. I watched Derek carefully during those days. He was distracted, constantly checking his phone, making calls he took in another room. "Work stuff," he'd say when he noticed me watching. "Trying to secure accounts before the storm." But I knew better. He was coordinating with Vanessa, trying to protect the property he'd purchased with my stolen money. 2 days before Melissa was expected to make landfall, Derek announced he had to stay in Miami. "Emergency at work," he said, throwing clothes into a bag. "They need someone to secure the office and make sure all the inventory is protected. You should go to your sister's place like we planned. I'll join you after." I agreed too easily. He looked relieved. 15. Derek left early the next morning. I waited 30 minutes, then followed him. Not to his office downtown. Not to secure inventory. He drove straight to Fort Lauderdale, to the waterfront condo, where Vanessa was frantically loading boxes into the silver Mercedes. I parked down the street and took photos. Vanessa looked upset, gesturing wildly as she talked. Derek carried boxes from the condo. Expensive artwork, electronics, designer bags. They were trying to save the most valuable items before the hurricane hit. Called Oscar from my car. "I need you to document something," I said, explaining what I was watching. "How fast can you get to Fort Lauderdale?" He arrived within an hour. Together we watched Derek and Vanessa make trip after trip, loading the car until it was packed full. Then Derek kissed her goodbye and drove back toward Miami. Vanessa stayed at the condo, apparently planning to ride out the storm despite evacuation orders. 14. Hurricane Melissa hit Fort Lauderdale at 3 in the morning on a Wednesday. I was safe at my sister's house in Orlando, watching coverage on television. My sister Brenda sat beside me, holding my hand as we watched the storm surge flood coastal areas. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "About Derek, about all of it." I told her everything the day before. Shown her the photos, the bank statements, the evidence of Derek's theft and betrayal. She'd cried for me when I couldn't cry for myself. On screen, reporters in rain gear described catastrophic damage along the coast. Winds over 120 miles per hour. Storm surge of 15 feet. Flooding throughout downtown Fort Lauderdale. The waterfront area where Derek's condo stood had been completely inundated. I felt no satisfaction watching the destruction. People were losing homes, possessions, everything. But I also felt a strange sense of cosmic justice. The property Derek had purchased with stolen money was being reclaimed by nature. 15. Derek called at dawn. His voice was panicked, barely coherent over the sound of wind and rain. Trish, the condo is flooding. Everything is destroyed. The insurance, I don't know if it'll cover all this. We've lost so much money. Still using that word. Kept my voice neutral. What condo? I didn't know we owned property in Fort Lauderdale. Silence on the other end. He'd forgotten to maintain his lie in his panic. It's complicated, he said finally. I'll explain when I see you. But Trish, this is bad. Really bad. We're going to need to figure out how to recover from this financially. I hung up without responding. Brenda looked at me with raised eyebrows. What now? She asked. Now, I said. I let him panic for a while longer. Then I filed for divorce. The next week was chaotic. Melissa had weakened after landfall, but the damage was extensive. Fort Lauderdale began assessing the destruction. 16. I returned to Miami once emergency services declared it safe. Our apartment had minor damage. Some water intrusion, lost power for 3 days, but nothing catastrophic. Derek was there when I arrived, looking haggard and exhausted. The television played news coverage of Fort Lauderdale. Aerial shots showed the waterfront area devastated. Buildings with walls torn away. Cars flipped and crushed. The condo where Derek had kept Vanessa was shown specifically in one report. Total loss. The entire first floor had been gutted by storm surge. We need to talk, Derek said. For once I agreed. We sat at the kitchen table, and I waited for him to begin. He rubbed his face, struggling for words. That property in Fort Lauderdale, the one that got destroyed. It was an investment property. I'd been managing it through South Shore Properties, and the storm completely wiped it out. The insurance situation is complicated. Complicated how? I asked calmly. 17. Derek shifted in his seat. The property wasn't fully insured. I'd been meaning to update the policy, but with everything happening I let it slide. We're looking at maybe 40% coverage at best. The rest is just a loss. 40% of my stolen inheritance. Destroyed by a hurricane. I almost laughed at the poetry of it. Show me the insurance documents, I said. Show me the property deed, the mortgage papers, all of it. I want to see exactly what we're dealing with. He hesitated. Trish, I don't think you need to worry about the details. I'll handle the insurance claims and recovery. You've got enough on your plate. Show me, I repeated. If we're married and this property is part of our assets, I have a right to see the documentation. Derek stood abruptly. I need to make some calls. Give me a few days to get everything organized. Then we'll sit down properly and go through it all. He left again. I waited until his car disappeared, then called Mrs. Torres. He's stalling, I told her. He can't show me the documents because they'll reveal everything. The affair, the stolen money, all of it. Are you ready to proceed? She asked. Ready to file. I thought about my grandmother. About the life she'd lived. The sacrifices she'd made to save that money. About the dreams I'd had for my bakery. About 8 years of marriage to a man who'd stolen from me without remorse. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Mrs. Torres filed the divorce papers that afternoon. The sheriff's deputy served Derek at his office the next morning. He came home furious, waving the papers. What is this? You're divorcing me over a financial disagreement. That's insane, Patricia. I was packing my things, moving the last of my belongings to my car. Brenda was coming to help me finish. It's not about the money, I said. It's about the theft, the lies, and Vanessa Klein. 19. Derek's face went white. Who told you about Vanessa? You did, I replied. Every time you claimed to be working late. Every time you said you were traveling for business. Every fraudulent charge on our credit cards. You told me about her through your actions. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos. Derek and Vanessa at the condo. Loading the Mercedes. The kiss goodbye before the hurricane. I know about South Shore Properties, I continued. I know about the condo you bought with my inheritance money. I know you've been funding your affair with my grandmother's savings. And I know Hurricane Melissa destroyed it all. Derek sank onto the couch, his anger deflating into something like desperation. Trish, please. We can work through this. I made mistakes, but we can fix this together. Don't throw away 8 years over one bad decision. 43,000 bad decisions, I corrected. One for every dollar you stole. Brenda arrived then, walking in without knocking. She looked at Derek with undisguised contempt. 20. The divorce moved quickly. Derek tried to fight at first, claiming the property loss meant we had no assets to divide. Mrs. Torres destroyed that argument in the first mediation session. She presented the bank statements showing the systematic theft, the credit card records proving the affair, Oscar's investigation documenting everything. Derek's attorney, a nervous young man who looked in over his head, tried to argue that the money had been spent on legitimate investments. Investments in what? Mrs. Torres asked sweetly. A love nest that's now underwater. A car for his mistress. Jewelry and expensive dinners. Show us one legitimate business investment. One. They couldn't. Derek's attorney advised him to settle. The terms were simple. Derek would pay me $43,000, the full amount he'd stolen, plus $15,000 in attorney's fees and damages. He would have 3 years to pay, with the debt secured against his future earnings. If he failed to pay, I could garnish his wages indefinitely. 21. Derek tried to call me after the settlement was finalized. I didn't answer. He sent emails apologizing, claiming he'd been confused and scared, saying he still loved me. I blocked him. Vanessa Klein also tried to contact me. She sent a message through social media claiming she hadn't known I existed, that Derek had told her he was divorced. I didn't respond. The truth didn't matter anymore. They'd both participated in spending my stolen money. They could figure out their future together in the ruins of their hurricane-destroyed fantasy. Focused on rebuilding. The catering company gave me additional hours. I picked up weekend work at a high-end restaurant. Every dollar went into my new, protected bank account. Slowly, the balance grew. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I had $8,000 saved. My bakery dream was coming back to life. One morning, Brenda called with news. You're not going to believe this, she said. Derek lost his job. The pharmaceutical company had downsized. Derek's position was eliminated. Without his steady income, he couldn't make the settlement payments. My attorney filed for wage garnishment, but you can't garnish unemployment benefits. Derek was scrambling, taking temporary sales jobs, struggling. Felt no sympathy. He'd made his choices. Natural consequences were teaching him lessons I couldn't. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. A reporter from a Miami news outlet contacted me. They were doing a follow-up story on Hurricane Melissa's impact and had come across the property records for the destroyed condo. We found something interesting, the reporter said. The property was purchased 3 months before the hurricane using funds that appear to have been misappropriated. There's a court record of your divorce settlement. Would you be willing to talk about what happened? I thought about it carefully. Public attention could be invasive, but it could also be powerful. Yes, I said finally. I'll talk. 23. The story ran 2 weeks later. It wasn't front-page news, but it was prominently featured in the local section. Local woman's inheritance stolen by husband, destroyed by Hurricane Melissa. The reporter had done thorough research. They'd interviewed Mrs. Torres, who explained the legal complexities of financial abuse between spouses. They'd found Vanessa Klein, who refused to comment. They tried to reach Derek, who also declined. But the story was clear without their participation. A woman's inheritance, stolen by her husband to fund an affair, destroyed by natural disaster months later. The comments section exploded. People shared their own stories of financial abuse. Domestic violence advocates discussed the warning signs. Other women thanked me for speaking publicly. The story was shared across social media platforms. Local news stations picked it up. Within days, it had been viewed hundreds of thousands of times. The bakery dream suddenly had unexpected support. People started reaching out, offering help. 24. A local business organization contacted me about a grant program for women entrepreneurs recovering from financial hardship. I applied and received $10,000 in startup funding. A commercial kitchen space owner offered me below-market rent, saying the story had inspired them. Culinary suppliers provided equipment at cost. Within 3 months, I had everything I needed to launch. I named the bakery Melissa's Kitchen. Not after the hurricane, but after my grandmother, whose full name had been Melissa Winters. She'd gone by her middle name, Rose, her whole life, but her legal name was Melissa. The coincidence felt like a sign. The bakery opened on a sunny Saturday morning. Brenda helped work the counter. Friends showed up to support. The local news even sent a reporter to cover the opening. By noon, we'd sold out of everything I'd baked. Derek heard about the bakery. He showed up one evening just before closing, standing outside the window watching me work. I saw him but didn't acknowledge him. Eventually he left. 25. 3 years after Hurricane Melissa destroyed the condo Derek had bought with my stolen money, I stood in my bakery watching the morning light stream through the windows. The space smelled like fresh bread and cinnamon rolls. Display cases held pastries I'd created, recipes I'd perfected during those long months of rebuilding. On the wall hung a photo of my grandmother, Melissa Rose Winters, smiling in her sewing room, surrounded by the work of her hands. My phone buzzed with an alert. The final settlement payment had cleared. Derek had made his last payment. 3 years of wage garnishment finally complete. My $43,000 had been restored, with interest. I transferred the money to a business expansion account. A second location was already in the planning stages. Brenda arrived for her shift, bringing her daughter, my niece Emma, who wanted to learn baking. "How does it feel?" Brenda asked. "Having it all back." I thought about the question. The money was restored, but that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was what I'd built from the wreckage. Business, reputation, a life that belonged entirely to me. "It feels," I said, tying on my apron, "like I finally started living." Outside, Miami morning traffic hummed past. Inside Melissa's kitchen, ovens warmed and dough rose. The hurricane had destroyed Derek's secret business and scattered his lies across the flooded streets of Fort Lauderdale. But from that destruction I'd built something real. Something of mine. Something that would last. And I was done looking back.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoy watching Karma, Payback, come full circle every week, we dive into tales of betrayal and poetic justice. Don't miss the next one. Tap the subscribe button and join the Revenge Squad.